So, I am Tori Miller. I'm a hairstylist, been a hairstylist for 27 years, and hairstylist turned certified holistic health practitioner, turned intuitive mindset and energy coach. And just based on what I've been doing for 27 years behind the chair, and seeing what I've seen in my own lived experience, I just showed up to help women heal, because I know that there's a need for it, just because I see it on a regular basis. And so that is what I am stepping into now fully.
And I'm Alicia Brewster. I am the founder of Eligible. I've been in the community for several years working in nonprofits, currently serving as program director for an organization focused on helping people put their faith into action. And I met you, Tori, last June. It was a Juneteenth event. And you, of course, were just, getting out there, I think, at that time with Blessings Rain. And I didn't really quite understand what an intuitive mindset coach was. But, of course, it was just enjoyable meeting you. And then you reached out to me over the holidays, maybe November, somewhere along the lines, and asked if I wanted to participate in a challenge. And at that time, I was kind of going through a seasonal transition, one where I felt like God was telling me to say yes, because a lot of times I will just, say, oh, I don't have time for this, and not even, really explore what the opportunity is. And so I've probably missed out on a lot of blessings, but thankfully God kind of had me slow down and really read your request or your offer, and I said yes.
Yes, you did.
Yes,
and I'm so glad that you did.
Me too.
It's turning into from a challenge to an amazing relationship and friendship.
Yes,
so I'm glad you
absolutely.
Said yes.
Yeah, me too. As we would never have known that we share a common name.
That's right.
So yeah, your middle name
is Alicia.
Yes.
Yeah.
So who knew? if we hadn't just, if you hadn't just been out there, said yes to that opportunity, and I hadn't said yes to the opportunity you were offering, and I think that has a lot to do with, why we were, able to take advantage of the opportunity that we had.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit today about love as an act of resistance. Yeah.
And identity.
And self-identity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you helped me quite a bit with just understanding why it was so important that I really tap into who I was, what I was here for, and I so appreciate that. That was all a part of the Tiny Challenge. And I know that you said that you are, actively working to fully, embrace your identities. And I'd love to hear more about what, you've discovered.
Yeah, so what I have discovered in my own healing journey is that the identity that I had so many years, it was not an identity of my own. It was based on my family, so culturally, things that were basically just put on me. And so I made a lot of decisions based on somebody else's identity, not who I truly am. And I wouldn't say that they are mistakes, because I think that everything, and we talked about this, is an opportunity for growth. It's part of my journey. But I have learned that you get to decide, or you get to shift your identity. You're not stuck with that. It just takes an open mind, a willingness to heal and do the work. And so that is how I am showing up now. And on my healing journey, I have learned to discover more of who I truly am, and outside, I always talk about this, outside of the roles that I serve. You know, so I'm not, when I say who I am not a wife or a daughter or even a hairstylist. Who I am, I had this conversation with my husband. The spirit was talking to me. Who I am is I am created in the image of God. And so in that, I am so much. I am love. And so just learning how to love myself, and in learning to love myself, I am discovering who I truly am.
That's good. That really resonates with me because I tend to identify like one of the roles that I love the most is being a mom. And I was in a conversation the other day, and we were talking about housing stability and about just how like unaffordable housing is nowadays. And the person said, well, you know, they gave a scenario of, you know, say, you know, teachers and firefighters and individuals who are not able to afford housing in our community right now. But he was like, but you know, if they just get married, then that would solve the problem. And of course, you know, I chuckled about it because you know, here's a man who's saying this.
Right.
And then of course, you know, I'm just like, okay, you know, so typical, typical answer that a man would give. But I had to think about that thing because, you know, a lot of times I think as women, we are kind of like, you know, struggling with this tug of, okay, is that what I want? Or do I want to, you know, build this career and be independent and be able to you know, be able to do this on my own. And so you're constantly in this tug of war sometimes, and sometimes you don't even feel like it's acceptable to say that that's what you want. And so I kind of had to just take a step back and say, you know, that is actually one way to be able to afford housing. So it wasn't that he was wrong. Right. Like, I mean, that's true. It's not a new concept at all. But the reality is that we know that everybody does not want that. And like, if they actually search within themselves, they'll realize that maybe that's something that society, their parents have, you know, wanted that for them, but it's not really what they want. So just, you know, I thought it was a good kind of reflective opportunity for me because I have struggled from time to time with, you know, feeling like that role wasn't good enough for me to say that I wanted to be a wife. I want to be a good wife. I want to be a good partner to a spouse one day. You know, I love being a mother. I want to be a grandmother one day, and I'm looking forward to that. And I would be absolutely okay if that was what God had for me. You know, I don't necessarily need to have any other title that, you know, maybe society would say, oh, that's, you know, this is what you should be striving towards. But I'll be okay if I didn't have that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just listened to you. I was making me thinking about when you said, you know, how we, with our identity, and we kind of follow along with what our family or society says. That was my experience with my first marriage. Not truly knowing who I was, not understanding my worth, being in a relationship, and you just kind of think this is just a natural progression. You know, you date for a long time and you shack up, as we say, and then you get married, knowing that wasn't the place that I needed to be. I knew that deep down inside, but just based on what society said, what my family said, I just kind of went along with the program because I wasn't sure of who Tori was and what Tori really wanted. And being young, you know, also. So yeah, identifying who you really are, and being able to love yourself where you are is super important. For any kind of relationship, I think, you know, I was thinking earlier that I've kind of sabotaged some friendships early on, based on my lack of trust from past hurt, you know, from past friendships. And once I got on my healing journey and I got to the root of it, it stemmed from my relationship with my mother, and not being able to fully trust her with my heart. And, like I said, I have intentionally sabotaged some relationships because of fear. I didn't want to get hurt, and that's what society kind of pushes, fear and not love, which goes back to love being a resistance. Like, choosing to love it's a radical act, in the world that we're in now, where fear is what's pushed. And so, yeah, just being able to go within, and self-awareness. Everything starts with self-awareness, but after that, and sometimes you got to sit with that awareness, like, man, that's really me. That's really a part of who I am. Like, I don't trust at the time females, and having to sit with that, but then being willing to do the work to unpack all of that so that you can move forward and build, or what I say, attract,
right,
meaningful relationships.
Yeah. We are twins for sure. Because let me tell you, boy, and so my fear really came from my whole world fell apart when I was like between 4 and 5 years old, because I lived in a house in Washington, D.C. I was completely happy and stable, and that was my whole world. And it felt like overnight, all of that changed.
Wow.
I was taken from, living in the big city, DC, having friends in the neighborhood, to like out to this rural community in Texas, and having to start all over again, and not having my dad there. I was with my mom, and she had gotten into a different relationship, and that kind of started my journey of like being like very protective of
absolutely.
my heart. I was just very careful about all of my relationships. I kind of always kept them, a few feet away, because I was like, this could all end.
Yeah.
I was really anxious about that, and I didn't realize I was. But that was just the way that I operated for most of my childhood, and really up until probably, the last 5 or 6 years, I've really been able to kind of do like that, peeling that onion back and understanding why I have always had very few close friends, and how even in my, family relationships, we were not very affectionate.
Yeah.
We never really shared like feelings. And so I didn't have like the words to be able to talk about what I needed, what I was feeling. And all those are things I've had to do as an adult. And I think that gets back to kind of that whole, like, this is really radical. Like, this is going against what society says we need to be focused on.
Absolutely.
And I just believe, like, just knowing the history of this country, it is so important for African Americans in particular to do that deep work, because for so long, we have almost been seen as being less than human in this country, and not needing to have the close relationships that we know is like so vital. It's been really cool going back and finding love letters of people who were enslaved, and they had maybe they were in a relationship with someone who was free, and just the way that love is what got them through, kept them hopeful, that there was something, that there was going to be a better day ahead. And so again, that's why I'm just such a big believer that we have to embrace like that whole the power that comes from our relationships, from having not only the brotherly love, which is so important, that's a piece of it, And of course, I believe the most important is agape love, like that type of love that God has for all of his children, but also that many of us desire, we really desire that romantic love. And a lot of times we just press that down.
Yeah.
Because we feel like, oh, it's not that important. I've got other things, more important things to do. But the reality is, if that's what you truly desire, then show up for yourself.
Absolutely.
Show up for yourself. Be honest with yourself.
That's the self-awareness, and then that's also to speak to the piece about your identity. Just being real with yourself versus going along with the status quo of the whole "I don't need a man" type of thing. If you don't want it, that's okay, but just being able to be real with yourself and say, this is what I desire for myself. So that was good. And then what you said about the love letters, that is powerful.
Yeah.
How the love, like it kept them going. There is power in love.
Absolutely.
So much more power in love than the fear that society pushes and sells. That is so powerful. Love for self, love for your fellow man, your sister. That is amazing. I love that. Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, and I do think that, when we, even getting back to the concept of economic mobility and, our ability to, endure and be able to navigate like this world that can be very chaotic and can be harsh many times, like having that person who is beside you, who like this person is going to be with me, through thick and thin, and I know that I can make it through because I've got this person with me. You have that level of commitment. And I think that there are so many of us who we feel like we have to do it by ourselves. And men feel that way.
Absolutely.
I've talked to a lot of guys in barbershops, and I hear them. I hear and can see the pain that they have, and they are just so fearful of getting into a relationship and getting hurt by someone. But at the same time, they're struggling.
Yeah.
They are struggling out here by themselves. And the same thing with women. I find that there are so many women who, are really, they are in their private times, they are, feeling unworthy, but they may cover it up with, well, I've got to focus on this, on my career, or I've got to focus on community, and never really taking the time to realize that they are just as worthy of getting that attention and getting that need met as the community is. And so it's it's something that I really am thankful that I have been able to like feel that level of freedom to just say it out loud that I want that.
This is what I want.
I want, and I am so grateful to know now that I'm in a relationship that is wonderful. I have my friends, I have someone who like, there's this full relationship with. There's, he's very attractive, and I just, blush every time I'm with him. But also like we're committed. We're friends. I can tell him anything, be authentic with him about who I am. I don't have to worry about, showing up with the hair done. He's seen all of the different versions of this.
That's right. Absolutely.
And I'm sure, like, even the day that I met him, I was a mess. I was a mess. I was out on a track. I was running. I was hot. I was breathing hard. And just, how you kind of have, again, the when you are in your own element, I was feeling strong, you know? And so even though I knew I didn't look very well, I felt confident about myself. And so I went over and introduced myself because I was curious about who is this attractive black man in my neighborhood playing basketball. So it's been a fun journey, but I can tell you that it's worth it. It's worth just saying and acknowledging what it is you really truly want and not continue to suppress that, because one of my favorite verses is Proverbs 13:12, and it's let's see, a heart, I've got to look it up, hold on, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. And I so believe that that is the truth, because when we truly are living the vision, the dream that's deep down inside of us, that is when we truly can flourish. And that's when we truly are able to be really the trees that produce and help to bring to life all of God's plans for this world. And we each have to find that for ourselves.
And you, let's not skim on the fact that you did a lot of work. You showed up to do the healing work. Just like you said, as a child, the things that you carried, like we all do. And that is why it is important for us to do that work, because I always say that everything is energy, right? And so we all carry a certain vibrational frequency. And so just like we were talking about fear and love, fear is a low vibrational frequency. And so if you're carrying that, it shows up in the way you present yourself to a potential mate, and it can repel them. So the very thing that we say we want or desire in life, we can actually push away based on what we're still holding on to, those suppressed emotions.
That's good. And I can attest to that. I have definitely pushed away a couple of guys because I was showing up fearful and anxious, and you can sense that.
Absolutely, you can feel it. It's real. The energy is real. Just like with you and I, there is a strong connection here. And like we feel that, we feed off of that. And so, and again, even in our connecting, it was vibrational, because I was able to unpack all of the fear of getting into another friendship with somebody and then them hurting me. It's like, okay, I'm showing up for me. I choose me first, and I show up that way. I've unpacked, all the hurt and the anger and all of the things that come with the mother wound. And so now you just automatically attract the thing that you desire. You don't have to chase it, which is why it's important for us to show up to do this healing work. So I just didn't want you to just skip over that. You've done the work.
You're right.
And so you and your man, it was just natural.
It was,
it was the right timing.
And I will say that I felt going into this, concept of a community for singles eligible, going into it feeling very inadequate. And then as you have helped me do, kind of pull out like the experiences that I've had. And so it's been a slow process of like having to remember, having to go back and look at my journal at some of the activities and the practices that I, did to be able to get to this point in my life where I do feel capable and confident. And I truly do believe that this vision that God has put inside of me, it is going to come to pass. He is going to provide the resources and the opportunities are going to be presented to be able to create, what, and I don't even know how it's going to look at the end, but I trust that if it's a vision that God planted inside of me, that it's going to be amazing.
And we just move, it's the same here. I don't know, I think I told you, Blessings Rain started out as a body butter line, and she is blossoming into all the things, holistic
Yes.
health, mind, body, spirit, emotions, energy, holistic wellness. And so I am extremely proud of you
Thank you.
for accepting, because what you have is amazing. And I know I tell you that all the time, but it really is. Um, Eligible is an amazing um, seed that God has planted. And so I am honored to be able to watch you and Eligible just bloom. It's exciting.
And you've watered it. You've watered it because that tiny challenge, it did a lot to help, kind of, get the growth that I feel has happened over the past couple of months.
Wow.
So
Thank
yeah,
you for that.
you know, your um, and I hate to call it a business because I feel like it's like your ministry.
It's a calling.
Yeah, like
Definitely a calling.
it feels bigger than a business,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's had already. I know even for my life, big impact.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for that. I
Yeah.
am. So let's talk about Eligible and this 21-day challenge that you have.
All right, so I do want to just make sure that I get all of the information out to everybody because I'm really, really excited. We are going to be running a 21-day cohort called Journey to Freedom and Love. And it's all about helping us get ready for a real relationship. Not just dating, but actually showing up as our best self before we even get to the date. So that means that we start with ourselves and we work our way out. So it's built on the framework that Eligible uses for, people to know if they really are ready to, go out and begin, dating and connecting in healthy ways. So we use the acronym READY.
I love this.
So R is for resolving past relationships. And for me, as I was saying, I needed time to actually process some relationships, two in particular that had really big impacts on my life. And so once I fully had the time to understand what my part was in those relationships, then I was able to move forward. And of course, we know the statistics. Marriage, 50% success rate. Second marriage, I think, is 60%. Third marriage is 75% failure rate, not success rate. So 50% failure rate, 60%, and then 75%. So the more times you get married, the higher the chance that it will not work.
Wow.
Yes.
Which even speaks more to the radical choice to love.
Yes.
Yes. Because you're fighting statistics.
Right.
You're fighting
That's true.
Cultural.
That's true.
And you're fighting your own lived experiences.
Yeah. And so that's again why, though, because most of the time people are not doing the self work that they need to understand why they are not successful in their romantic relationships. So that's why the R is the very first step, is resolving your past relationship. So we have activities in the 21-day journey that helps people unpack that.
Okay.
And then there's E for emotional intelligence. And of course, this whole unpacking is a part of that process. But emotional intelligence is really you understanding what your emotions and your feelings are telling you about yourself and about what you need. I was in a relationship a few years ago, and pretty much early on, within probably the first month, I knew that it was not a good fit.
We always know.
But I kept pushing through because I was like, well, I enjoy talking to him. He has this really deep story that I thought was just so amazing. But he did not like talking about certain things, family things he did not like talking about. And I sensed that I was getting anxious because I didn't trust if he couldn't tell me about, certain people in his life, like children, or just like I knew that there was something that wasn't quite right. And it just really it ended up being that I needed clarity and I wasn't getting it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I know about myself is I want a long-term healthy relationship. And if I can't clearly understand like who I'm getting into a relationship with and kind of be able to peel back the onion, I have no idea if it's really going to work long term. And so, I knew it wasn't the right fit for me because I knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
But I just kept, pushing through and feeling like, oh yeah, eventually he's going to open up and then we're going to get through it and
I can fix it.
Yes. So anyways, emotional intelligence.
And to speak to the anxiety that you were feeling, because with our soul food conversations, we did a meditation based on the signals that your body gives you.
Yeah.
So you notice that feeling, the anxiety. Just want to ask, just for our listeners, where did you feel it in your body?
It was more so, I don't remember where I felt it, but I will say that it was just something I just knew.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was even waking up like in the middle of the night. God literally waking me up in the middle of the night, like that's not.
Yeah.
And I was having this back and forth conversation with God, like, okay, well, God, just tell me why. Like, I just need to understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
Because, again, like my visual, of this person is, this is good.
Yeah.
But, there was just something that
wasn't right.
Not right. So yeah.
Trust the feelings
right.
that your body gives you. Yes, absolutely.
The A is for authenticity, and that's just showing up as your truest version of yourself. And that requires us, of course, doing the work, like figuring out who we are, but also just even in whatever state that you're in, being okay with that. Like being okay with your flaws, being okay. And not just that you want to stay where you are, because I believe that we should all be like, wanting, desiring to evolve and grow, but that you are transparent. Like I saw, because I used to do online dating, and I would see so many pictures of guys like in front of these, sports cars or shirts off and, showing off the muscles. And I'm just like, what is this? Like, but, again, that gets back to like, you feel like you have to perform for someone. And women, we do the same thing. We feel like we got to show up and perform. But being authentic is so important because at the end of the day, eventually, who you are is going to come out.
Show up.
Yes. Yeah. And that's not fair to the other person.
That's right. Which is what I love about your story, what you were telling when you met your guy, how you showed up. You felt like you were a mess, but that was me. That was you.
It is.
So being your authentic self, that's beautiful. I love it.
The D is for desiring a committed relationship, and we have to, again, get really crystal clear about what we really want.
Yeah.
And if you aren't ready for one, you can't tell someone that you are. You really have to be ready for that, because again, it's not fair to someone else for them to think that you eventually, are looking forward to, marriage or, long term, and you want to be locked in, and the reality is that you're not.
Yeah.
So that's the D. And then my favorite is Y, and I, couldn't find another better way to say that. But the reality is, you only live once, right?
That's it.
And so you have to be confident enough to take that step, and to put yourself out there, and just to see and to be seen, and even the friends who don't end up being your forever boo. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right. I was trying to figure out what I had written, but the reality is that everybody that you go out with, everybody that you meet, is not going to be your forever person, and that's okay.
That's right.
That is okay. That's all a part of the process. That's a part of how we grow and get to know who we are better through our relationships with people.
And you get to learn. what I don't want or what I do want.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that, Alicia.
Thank you. So yeah, ready, and it's a 21-day challenge. The cohort takes a whole group through these 21 days. There are in-person connections where we do some work together in group, and then there are a lot of personal, kind of self-paced steps that you take as well.
Love it. So how can, for anybody who's interested, how can they join?
Yep. If you are interested, we're kicking off with a kind of a trial group.
Okay.
But you can go to our website, readyandeligible.com. We do have registration on the platform.
Okay.
And so you can sign up to be a part of that pilot group. And then pretty soon we'll be releasing the full program.
Love it.
Yes.
All right. So readyandeligible.com, y'all.